Today we're reviewing the Mi RoboVac Mop 2 Ultra by Xiaomi. For those of you that don't know, Xiaomi is an absolutely giant Chinese tech company, probably the Chinese equivalent of Samsung. They do pretty much everything, but they've done a pretty good robot vacuum as well, and they've previously also owned the well-known Roborock brand. The new Ultra is a much more premium robot vacuum than all of their previous ones, at least that have been released here. And I think that's probably because Xiaomi and Roborock have actually split back up mostly, or at least it seems they have. So they're trying to play again in the more premium space that they used to leave for the Roborock brand. The Ultra, as a result, is the first Xiaomi that has an auto empty station, and it also has object avoidance and object detection. And you can still see a lot of that Roborock R&D and technology coming through in the product, which means that it is pretty good. I've always kind of thought the Xiaomi products are very good for their price range. And again, the Ultra is surprisingly good. I think the most notable thing about it is at its price point, it is equivalent to most other flagship robot vacuums, but at about 25% lower price point. As I said, there's quite a lot that's new to Xiaomi over the previous Mop Xiaomi model. Not to be confused with the new Ultra Roborock base, the Mi Ultra base is simply an auto empty station that holds up to 4 liters of debris, and it has 16,500 pascals of suction in the vacuum motor that sucks out of the robot back into the base every time it docks. This means that your robot can clean for about 4 to 6 weeks depending on how much dirt your house has. The robot itself, like the previous Mi Mop, has a LiDAR navigation system on the top, which is just a laser system that constantly rotates and scans the room. It uses this for its positional navigation, so it knows exactly where it is all of the time, and it always knows where it is in relation to other things, so you can even pick it up, carry it into another room, and it will recognize its surroundings and show it accurately on the map in the app. Overall, I think that the most surprising thing about the whole robot is that the navigation is ridiculously good. I happened to open this the same day as a bunch of other much more expensive robots, and at the time I was actually most impressed by this robot in particular. Even on its first initial clean, when it's still learning the house, I noticed that it was starting to divide the rooms quite smartly. It was identifying doorways before it could even know what was beyond that. It was cleaning that room and then moving on to the next one. It isn't a big deal really, but it just shows the inherent intelligence of the robot to recognize that as it's moving. On the front, it has the 3D object detection, which is just a secondary light array which detects things in 3D that are on the ground below the height of the main sensor. Previously, robot vacuums relied on the bump sensor, which is just a little push sensor that takes about 50 grams of force to turn the robot away. The problem is though that this does not solve things like socks or cables that are on the floor, and so the robot will go over the top and suck them into the brush and wrap them, and you'll come home to find the robot stuck. We're starting to expect this 3D object detection on higher end robots, but it is kind of new on a mid to low end robot vacuum like this one is. So I think that it's exciting to see it come, and once again Xiaomi are bringing premium features down to a lower price point. It is not perfect, but it will help if you do go out and you forget to pick stuff up before you go. It is a lot less likely to get stuck, but it's not perfect. It isn't noticeably worse than most of the much more expensive robots though. So for the price, it's definitely worth having, and it's definitely worth paying that little bit extra over the previous models. If we take a look at the robot, I do quite like the look of it. It is shiny though, so it will tend to show fingerprints and muck and dirt. And robot vacuums, particularly with these side brushes, do tend to flick stuff up on top of themselves. So over time, you're gonna have to keep it clean or it will start to look quite mucky. It's a similar situation with the base itself. I quite like the simple black shape. When you see it side by side to others, it does look a little basic, but I do like the simplicity of it, and I think it kind of hides itself into your home. Looking at the bottom, I can definitely see again that Roborock influence coming through. We have here a bristled roller brush, which is a single one, and as you can see, it has tangled quite a lot of hair around it. The good thing is that this bristle here will pull the hair out of the carpet, but then it often won't make its way into the dustbin. So you will have to get the tool, take the brush out, and then clear that hair every now and then. You see that we have the 4 drop sensors, which detect drops that are big enough for the robot to hurt itself. so it won't have any issues on stairs, and if you have a multi-level home, you can just carry it up the stairs, press play, it'll clean the area and then return to where it started, and you can carry it back to the base. Here you just have a little caster wheel, the 2 charging pins, and we can also attach the mop here. Here is where the auto empty station empties the robot into itself, and it is actually a 2-way system rather than 1, which is unusual, but it seems to do a pretty good job. Once again, the mop is a standard drag around mop, but the Xiaomi ones do a Y cleaning pattern, which just means that it reverses on an angle and then recovers each spot when you have it on the thorough cleaning mode. As it is a standard drag around mop though, it can't raise itself up over carpet, which means that if you have hard floors separated by carpet areas, you will have to carry the robot when the mop is attached, but it is a simple thing just to clip the mop on or off. At 4,000 pascals, once again, it has more suction than most higher priced robots in the market. And with a single bristled roller brush, it does particularly well at picking up the pet hair, but like I said before, you will have to clear it off the brush quite regularly. For comparison, the Roborock S7, which is definitely a slightly more premium robot, has 2,500 pascals of suction and a rubber brush. The Mop 2 Ultra was again pretty average for a good robot vacuum in our cleaning tests. On carpet, it got about 97% of the rice, leaving a few grains behind. It did flick a lot of it around with the side brushes. There are pros and cons to this. Obviously, sometimes it flicks it away from the vacuum, but in a kitchen, for example, it means it has a good go at getting any crumbs around the skirting board. It got 95% of the Fruit Loops, but it seemed like it was almost trying to avoid them. This may be because it was detecting them as items, and there's no option in the app to turn this feature off. It did remove all of the hair in our test, but not much of it actually made it into the dustbin, as most of it was wrapped around the brush. It wouldn't be this bad in real life, but you can expect to have to clear the brush fairly frequently if you have pets or long-haired people. On quiet mode, it is actually pretty quiet at 62 decibels, and you could comfortably clean while you're at home. On max mode, it is up to about 77 decibels, which is similar to an average handheld vacuum. The mopping was pretty much exactly what you would expect for a standard drag around mop. It wasn't too great. It did a reasonable job on the grape juice, which is easier, but it did make a bit of a mess of the sticky syrup. The robot connects to the Mi Smart Home app, so it's part of the wider Xiaomi ecosystem, which you can connect with all of your other Xiaomi robots. Once you're in the app and you have your robot connected, you will see a map something like this after it's completed its first clean. As you can see at the moment, it's showing exactly what it did on its last clean. So that white line shows where it went and how it decided to break up each room. In that specific one, I decided not to clean the orange room, and instead I just selected these 4 areas and hit start. Once the robot's out, as you can see, you have the option to send it back to dock, or you can start or stop it, so it's all pretty simple. At the bottom here, we have the option to change the cleaning settings. As you can see, there are 4 different vacuuming power suction settings, and you can also change the water flow rate on the mop. You also see all of the information for the previous cleanup here, which just says that we cleaned 45 square meters in 38 minutes, and there is currently 96% battery left. Here we have the option to send the robot to a specific area. So if we click on it, drag it, and select the area and then click start, it will just go and clean that specific area. So that's good if you've made a spill and you don't want to clean the whole house. We also have an area editor, which is where we can choose to divide a room by cutting it in half. It is a little bit fiddly, but it works and it gets the job done. So now we can choose to clean that half of the room on a schedule and then clean that half on a second schedule in the afternoon, for example. We can also rename our rooms by clicking on an area, clicking rename, and then we could call this the main office. A particularly useful feature is the virtual wall or the no-go area. By selecting a virtual wall, we can go along the front of the window here, rotate it around, and it will stop the robot from whacking into the floor-to-ceiling glass because the laser sensor will see through it. So that is very useful. You generally want to put it around your ranch sliders or any big glass windows. You can also set up a virtual no-go zone So it's a similar concept to a virtual wall, except the robot will not go inside this entire area. So that's useful if you want to stop it from going around a dog bowl or something like that. You can get very precise once you zoom in and select the specific object. There's a similar concept for no mopping, but that only applies when the mop is attached, and it won't go on any carpets if the robot isn't detecting them. We also have the option to set up cleaning schedules as always. Once again, it's pretty simple. You select your starting time. You also have the option to select how often it will repeat. So for example, you could select it to vacuum every working day, or you could set up 2 separate cleans so that it'll clean half the house in the morning and half the house in the afternoon if you had a particularly large home. Under the device settings, we have the option to enable a resume setting. This means that if the robot runs out of battery halfway through a clean, it will go back, recharge, and then it will return to where it was up to without recovering anything to finish the job. This is absolutely essential if you have more than about 120 to 150 square meters. In the dust collection settings, you can turn on or off the auto empty base. You may as well leave it on, but you can also change the frequency. So you can set it up to do it twice. You can also set up a do not disturb mode, which means that the robot won't resume during those hours. So between 10 AM and 8 AM as default, it won't resume its clean if it needs to recharge. This will just stop it from giving you a fright midway through the night. There is a child lock, which is super helpful because there are a couple of buttons on the base and the robot, and you can use this child lock to disable that, and you'll only be able to start the vacuum through the app. There are a whole bunch of other settings, generally pretty standard for smart robot vacuums nowadays and pretty easy to use in general. I actually don't have that much to say about this robot for once, and it's not because it's boring. I was actually really impressed with it and I was kind of excited, but there's nothing really new in particular. It has most of the features you find on most other premium robots. It cleans really well. The navigation is up, at least 95% as good as the best on the market. And I think that overall, it's more a question of whether the extra benefits that you might get by spending 50% more or even double as much are going to be worth it for you, because it will just go ahead and get the job done, and it will do it well. Because it still has the same 5,200 milliamp hour lithium ion battery that all of the top robots have, it's capable of looking after a pretty large home. It's definitely better if you have a little bit of hard floor and mostly carpet, and it's good for kids, pets, people with a little bit of clutter on the floor, but it will do a really good job. So anyone that's got a budget and a multi-level home, can be quite large, should definitely consider the Mi Ultra. As always, ask any questions in the comments below and we'll do our best to give you detailed, proper answers. You can also watch our Roborock S7 Max V Ultra video if you're considering whether it's worth spending a little bit more for the absolute best.